Good afternoon, Nina. It's Thomasina again from Philly.
Hi.
I just want to say first, thank you. I actually signed up to your site yesterday and started going through the community. Yes, thank you. And thank you for the free trial, but I am going to continue with it. I appreciate that discounted rate.
Oh, good. Please post. We want to hear your voices. And before you ask me a question, I just have to say that was so amazing in Philadelphia, the turnout. It was so heartening to see. It was like, I protested whatever it was 10 days ago in Harlem at the beginning of this. And I really felt kind of depressed at the end of the day and demoralized. It really felt like, really, again, it was just so, and there was so much anger and it was just really sad. And now as the week has gone on, I hope I'm feeling heartened. I mean, it's amazing, all these people that are showing up. And anyway, so Philadelphia helped me feel better. So
it was an amazing turnout. Yeah, it really was.
Yeah.
I read that you described your mom as being not as present in your life, in your childhood, but that you came to know her better and understand her journey better through her films and her writings. It kind of reminded me of the film that came out earlier this year, The Photograph with Issa Rae. I don't know if you've seen that, but her character also had a mom who wasn't as present, distracted, that she came to know later in life through her art. Can you talk about that process a little bit, if it impacted you creating this community of women to help, and also if you've come to that place of forgiveness that you mentioned was within reach back in 2016?
These are so many good questions, and I have so much to say on this subject. So I'm going to start on the. So let's see. First of all, I should say that in Notes from a Black Woman's Diary, the second book I published of my mom's work, which I edited, I included her 1974 screenplay, which is called A Summer Diary. And it's the first screenplay she ever wrote. It's never been produced. And it has been optioned now by Issa Rae, which is amazing. So, and it's in development. I know, it's really cool. So Angela Flournoy, who wrote The Turner House, is working on a screenplay, and, fingers crossed. It's very, very exciting. And I like the Issa Rae people, what I've dealt with them so far. That said, when I saw The Photograph, I was super disturbed because, and I've never said this publicly, and I don't really know that any of you should say it publicly, but I'm just going to tell you because we're sitting here talking. You do whatever you want with it. I really think it was slightly plagiarized. There are some lines in there that are very, very, very similar to my Vogue article that I wrote in 2015 about my mother. And certainly that character in that movie, I think it was inspired at the very least by my story. And Issa didn't write it, and whatever. I thought for a minute about doing, and then whatever. Then COVID happened, and we're just going to let it go. There are no original stories, but it's very much there are moments in that movie. There are things my mother said to me. So yes, it was hard having a mom who was, she really, really was an artist, and she was very smart and very unusual and kind of funny, and sometimes I feel kind of self-conscious, or almost kind of conceited, saying how unusual she was, because of course everyone's unusual, but through my life there's no one that's kind of come close to her. She was really quite a character, but as a mother she was quite self-absorbed because she was a really serious artist, and she was pretty depressed, and she had a really bad time with men, and my father was a huge shit, and her mom had died in childbirth, after childbirth with her. Her mom never recovered from childbirth. She died when my mom was 5 months old. She did have a really lovely stepmother, my grandmother, who raised her, and who died when she was 108, and who I love, but she was not a blood relative. So my mom was always, there was a lot of depression, and also because there were just two kids. It was me and my younger brother, and I think she did something a lot of us do as mothers, which is I think she over-identified with me as her daughter and expected me to probably take on more than I could. So packing lunches. When she died, she left me responsible for my brother legally, even though I had a father and a stepfather who were both alive and kind of useless. but yes, this process of looking at her. So when she died, I was very super depressed and very, very angry for a long time, really. And it took until my 30s, angry because she kept her illness a secret. So I didn't know she was sick. And then I had my brother. But I always felt loved by her and very connected to her. But it was complicated by the circumstances of her death and by my childhood. When I was a kid, I was left alone a lot. I mean, she was just very wrapped up in her dramatic life. But through this process of really getting to know her work, I think there are a number of things. Really getting to know her work as an adult, because it wasn't until my late 30s and into my 40s that I started really delving into her work. And then the process of getting it out in the world has made me feel so proud of myself, honestly, of like proud of her, because it's her work, I think, is extraordinary and kind of was ahead of its time. And so to be able to give it to people it just feels like a huge gift. But also for me personally, to have done this for her makes me feel grown up and equal to her in a way. For a long time, I just felt like the suffering kid, the suffering kind of angry kid. And I don't feel that way anymore. And I do think, I didn't realize until a couple years after I started this community. I started the community when I was 46, and my mom died at 46. And for my whole life, I felt like my mom was like ahead of me. Like I had this image of who she was and her strength and her ability to do stuff. And I could kind of look toward her. But when I turned 46, I realized I didn't know what she would have been like at 50 or 55 or 60. So I no longer had a model. And in some ways that was very freeing. Which was a kind of good feeling. You know, people always talk about that idea of like reaching the age when your parent died, and that's so scary. And I actually felt kind of liberated by it. But I also think that I created the Wolfer Group in a lot of ways to have a mother and sisters and women who could tell me what the journey would be like going forward. Because that's really how the group functions in a lot of ways. It really genuinely feels like a sisterhood, as kind of corny as that sounds. So yeah, I didn't do it intentionally, but I do think in retrospect, that's what I was doing.
Okay, thank you. Did you reach that place of forgiveness that was within reach for you?
I think I really have, in part also, and I think we all feel this as mothers, because the more you raise your own kids, the more you realize how much you screw up. And I always say to people with kids, I think it's easy when they're little, or even when they're like 9, 10, 12, you always think, like, how hard is this? You know, you feed them, you take care of them. But I think when kids hit around 20 and they start to reckon with their own flaws and problems, and they start to be mad at you about the ways you screwed up, I think that's when you realize, that's when you start to be able to be more forgiving of your parents. So yeah, and I do forgive her. I mean, I do. I miss her, but I do forgive her. And I've always, I mean, her love, I never doubted her love. So it's just the not having her that has been hard. That's really the thing that I regret, is just how it caused me to screw up a lot of things in my early life, because I was so distraught and angry. But that's not really her fault.
Thank you very much for that.
Sure, thank you.